Today we're discussing free speech and how in the heck Ketanji Brown Jackson ever got on the Supreme Court. She doesn't understand the First Amendment, guys. It doesn't make any sense. She doesn't understand the most basic amendments. She doesn't understand the difference between a man and a woman. She can't define a woman as a human female. It's not that difficult. It's really not that challenging, but she can't do it. But we have this post here from Rand Paul agreeing with Matt Taibbi, who is a great follow. If you haven't checked him out, I highly recommend it. And he says in his Substack article, listening to Ketanji Brown Jackson complain that plaintiffs opposing censorship programs might be hamstringing the government when the entire purpose of the First Amendment is to hamstring government was like someone driving a tank back and forth over Old Yeller. Wow, that's a visual. I'd rather not visualize it, but this is where we are right now. So, this article from Rack 8 News and written by Matt Taibbi is quite good. Talks about the First Amendment, going to court, and it says here later in oral arguments yesterday during the Murphy v. Missouri censorship case before the Supreme Court, newest Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson interrogated J. Benjamin, I'm going to say that wrong, Aguinaga, Solicitor General of Louisiana. Jackson says, so my biggest concern is that your view has the First Amendment hamstringing the government in significant ways in the most important time periods. Can you help me? Because I'm really worried about that, because you've got the First Amendment operating in an environment of threatening circumstances from the government's perspective. Ooh, the First Amendment threatens the government. Oh my goodness. And you're saying that the government can't interact with the source of those problems. Can you help me? Yes, I would love to help you, Justice Jackson, to a less challenging line of work. Hamstringing the government. Good God, he says. And I don't have a paid subscription, so we can't read the rest. But if you're a subscriber, I definitely recommend checking it out. And here we have an article with Jim Jordan criticizing Justice Jackson as well. She just has no idea what she's talking about. It says, House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan of Ohio was inside the Supreme Court for part of its Murray versus Missouri oral arguments, ripped Justice Jackson's critique of one's plaintiff's comments about federal pressure on social media firms during the coronavirus pandemic. Let's remember that we know for sure, because of Elon Musk, that the FBI spent at least $3 million to get who they wanted removed from Twitter, back when it was called that. Now it's X. And that's probably just the tip of the iceberg. What's really disgusting is that America's First Amendment rights can be bought for $3 million. That's it. That's not that much money coming from the federal government. Yet they were able to bribe Twitter with those efforts. Those were usually that was largely to ban conservatives, but you can be sure that those conservatives were discussing things like COVID. And we've seen similar problems with other social media sites like Facebook and YouTube. So Jordan told Fox News that Jackson's comments about the government potentially being hamstrung by the First Amendment helped underline the power many on the left sought to wield upon opposing viewpoints during the pandemic. Oh yeah, a lot of people were just fired from their jobs for voicing concerns about the pandemic and vaccine mandates. Quote, the big takeaway today was Jackson when she said to the Solicitor General from Louisiana, she said, you've got the First Amendment hamstringing the government. Well, that's what it's supposed to do, for goodness sake, he said Monday. It was literally one of the craziest things I've ever seen, that you could have a justice on the United States Supreme Court say that in the oral arguments. Made no sense to me, Jordan added, calling the exchange frightening and potentially bad precursor if such views take greater hold. Understand what took place here. This was censorship by surrogate, Jordan said of the suppression of countervailing thought during the pandemic. And let's remember that's also the point of a lot of the anti-racists who want to bring about departments of anti-racism, or like they have in Washington State, the Department of Equity. Fortunately, that department does not have a lot of power, but what the anti-racists want is for them to be able to cancel any law at any level that's deemed racist by them, which is very dictatorial, right? We have checks and balances in government for good reason. During oral arguments Monday, Louisiana Solicitor General Benjamin, guy whose name I can't pronounce, engaged in a back and forth with Justice Amy Coney Barrett regarding pressure from government towards social media companies, the latter of which were accused of censoring talk of alternative treatments and virus sourcing conjecture at the whims of the feds and other entities. Jackson told Aguinaga her biggest concern is that your view has the First Amendment hamstringing the government in substantial ways in the most important time periods. And some might say that the government actually has the duty to take steps to protect citizens of this country, and you seem to be suggesting that that duty cannot manifest itself in the government encouraging or even pressuring platforms to take down harmful information. And let's remember what the WEF says. They say the biggest danger to the world going forward is misinformation, right? Is that the biggest danger? Is that the biggest concern? Not really. They're really just advocating for government propaganda. Our position is not that the government cannot interact with a platform, but the way that they do has to be in compliance with the First Amendment. I think that means they can give them all the true information the platform needs and ask to amplify that. The true information, as determined by the state. How Orwellian is that, right? George Orwell is rolling over in his grave listening to this nonsense. Representative Dan Bishop, who had joined Jordan in court for some of the arguments, told America Reports it appeared Jackson suggested at times the government, quote, could coerce private parties to suppress third-party speech. What? What? That is awful. You cannot have this happening in this country. I mean, it's already happening, but we have to stop that from happening. Stop having the government bribe social media companies to ban right wingers. That's not okay. It says down here that would leave the FBI to embed itself with social media companies. Hey, I mean, a former employee of the CIA runs Bud Light, right? He's the CEO, so it's not like this stuff isn't already happening. Take down the Hunter Biden laptop in election after election after election, if that's the way it turns out, right? But for those of us who were reading alternative media before the last election, we knew about the Hunter Biden laptop situation, didn't we? And it kept getting suppressed in the mainstream news. Well, now the mainstream news is slowly dying, right? Especially television news. All right, and then this article here from the American Thinker covers this issue more thoroughly. It's pretty interesting. You might want to check it out as well. It says here, it is in the most important time periods, of course, when the First Amendment's protections for free speech are indisputably vital. Reserving free expression and vigorous public debate for times of civil peace and relative social unity is like protecting a person's Second Amendment right to own a gun only when his life is not threatened. As with firearms we possess, the words we speak and write matter most during times of emergency. It is precisely when the government is certain in its point of view and committed to its plan of action that contradictory voices and public dissent are necessary. If the First Amendment stands for anything, it is that the government's speech is never more important than the people's. And the louder the government's voice rises over any issue, the louder the people's voice must be able to rise to help filter out truth from the mind-numbing spectacle of official propaganda. Right? Yeah, we definitely have to take that into consideration. That was a fantastic paragraph right there. I love that paragraph. The paramount lesson of the COVID apartheid state in which Western governments flagrantly abused their legal powers to criminally punish, isolate, and harass opponents of rank totalitarianism disguised as healthcare is that dissent matters. How about healthcare choice? Why can't we just get stipends like they do in Switzerland, where they're like, here's your $300, shop where you want. You don't have to go to Medicaid if you don't want to. Is the sentiment permitting the free flow of scientific information matters, public debate matters, holding public officials' feet to the fire is the only method of reining in government's perverse predilection for demagoguery, medical experimentation, unethical mandates, religious discrimination, thuggish enforcement of arbitrary rules, and brutal suppression of contrary points of view. Man, and a lot of us have experienced that. We just saw on my news feed, on the Rand Paul Review news feed on Substack, I posted a link, or a meme, I mean, showing that another Ron Paul page, not Rand Paul this time, another Ron Paul page, was taken down by Facebook for their nonsense rules about violating community standards. But let's remember the mainstream didn't like Ron Paul, right? He kept getting taken off of mainstream media, yet he kept getting lots of funding, the most funding when he was running, back when he was running for president, from members of the military. And then they kept suppressing him in mainstream news like CNN. So even Fox News was annoying me quite a bit back then with them not showing him in polls where he was in the top three. That was a big deal a decade ago. But, it is what it is, I suppose. So, and then this final article here, we have Senator Rand Paul's reaction to Judge Jackson's confirmation hearing. A lot of Republicans were against it, obviously, because, again, he can't define what a woman is, or she can't define what a woman is. And so Dr. Paul had reservations about confirming her and left when that was happening. But Democrats needed their DEI, their affirmative action appointment, so they could feel good about themselves, because the meritocracy doesn't really matter to Democrats. So Dr. Paul wrote, "I was disappointed that she doesn't know how to define a woman." He said, "I think if you can't define the difference between a man and a woman, you can't decide cases on Title IX, right? The most basic things they won't be able to decide." When asked to define what a woman is by Senator Marsha Blackburn, Judge Jackson responded in part, "Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is as I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments, and I look at the law and I decide." West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin all but ensures that Judge Jackson will be confirmed to the Supreme Court. Because this article is older than the ones we just listened to. Manchin said, after meeting with Jackson and considering her record, he determined she is supremely qualified and has the disposition necessary to be a Supreme Court justice. But let's remember, she said she's not a biologist as well, and that's why she couldn't define what a woman is, which is quite ridiculous, right? A woman is a human female. It's not that complicated. All right. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy this content, and let me know what else you'd like to hear about in the comments.